Hi, Shiv. Thank you for doing
Hi,
this.
you're welcome.
All the way from Canada to Australia and vice versa. Um, I actually came across your writing and your book, Advaitaholics Anonymous. And I actually like the title, I have to admit. It just makes me giggle, I think, each time, because I find that um, I could be wrong, of course, but I find that it could be the case that we get addicted to this message and we get addicted to the meetings and we miss the point of living the life, you know. So can you expand on that a bit, or is this how you see that? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's not just this message. You can get addicted to any message. And most of society is addicted to one form of message or the other, whether it's a consumerist message or a spiritual message, it doesn't matter. It's a message. It's basically a formula for living life.
mm,
Everyone's looking for a formula because it takes effort to live your life in a spontaneous way, figuring things out uh, in a manner that's authentic to you. It takes much less effort to follow a script, especially when the script is guaranteeing you something, a reward at the end, whether that reward is financial, spiritual, there's a reward. All you got to do is follow the script. Very easy. Writing your script from scratch, however, takes creativity. And creativity requires you to be present, open, receptive. These are things that we naturally are able to do as kids, but somewhere along the way, it gets taught out of us, right? Whether through the school system or through our parents or social interaction, it gets taught out of us, right? The book title itself, Advaitaholics Anonymous, I'm glad you appreciate it. Most of my family couldn't understand what it meant. They're trying to pronounce the title of, really, this is what you want to call your book? Are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure the people who are supposed to read it will understand it,
we'll
but
get it.
the average person won't. And
Yeah,
because
of course.
and that's not to put the average person down. What is the average person? But what I mean is people who are not familiar with this brand of philosophy or spirituality won't understand, first of all, what Advaita is, and then they won't get the play on Advaitaholics because there you need some background to it. And so really when I started writing, it was targeted towards this niche community of people who have become involved in spiritual teachings and wisdom paths, and that's become a part of their life. It's not something they're doing as a hobby, but it's taken over to the point where it's revamped the way they see their life, right? It's reformatted their brains, and now instead of seeing it, the way the normal person does now, they're seeing it purely through this lens of this philosophy, which is Advaita Vedanta. Which, by the way, I have no problem with the philosophy whatsoever. I have no problem with any kind of philosophy. I don't have to agree with it, but there's merit to every philosophy. It means a person, whoever's come up with it, has thought deeply about life, reflected, probably had some direct experience that they're leaning upon in order to arrive at those conclusions. Are those conclusions accurate in each case? Maybe, maybe not. There are degrees, but the point is, I respect that is where it's emerged from. What I don't respect is people then taking that and trying to repeat it as a formula. Well, you didn't come up with it. Adi Shankara did. So if he wants to live the Advaita way, great. It was his philosophy to begin with. They were his insights. But then you have, I don't know how many thousand years of people now repeating and regurgitating that as if they understand it. Well, I don't respect that because that's not your insight. You now built a culture around it, and the culture there to support now this philosophy, it becomes an echo chamber. And everybody agrees with each other, so they don't question it anymore because all they see is agreement, so it must be true. It's a phenomenon that happens every day in all forms of culture. And this is the danger of culture. The benefit of culture is that it gives you safety in numbers. It has an overarching story that then everybody can congregate around and support each other. There's a community, there's people taking care of each other's children. All of this wonderful stuff happens around the culture, but it's all based on a fundamental premise, which is an assumption. That's all it is. And so for a truth seeker, they have to go beyond the comforts and the benefits of culture to, well, is this really true? And I'm going to investigate that for myself first before I just assume it is. And that becomes the addiction to wanting to believe because you are refusing to see, right? And so the Advaitaholics Anonymous phrase is really meant to highlight this one aspect of this addiction, but this addiction takes numerous forms, myriad forms. You know, everywhere you look, that addiction exists.
Yeah, yeah. To me, it's how I saw that title. It just, you know, we all have different points of views, sort of. And people still judge or have opinions or whatever. But what came to me when I saw this was basically like almost like a recovery from the seeking and sitting in the meetings. I think I find it that people go a wrong way. Rather than being genuine, like for myself, I didn't, I can speak for myself. When I went to the meetings, it was basically to get through that. I didn't even know what it was, what I was looking for. And I just wanted to save myself from myself. But I believe that I was really genuine with that. I wasn't there as a seeker to become a spiritual teacher or to join a cult. To me, joining any group, whether it's political party, I've been in politics myself, and I've been on a pro-government, against the government. Even when I went against the government, I thought they were more genuine people I clicked with. But I've noticed the more I spend time with them, it was no longer for the guy, like I'll mention this was Julian Assange. I was in his party. And the more basically I was in there, the more I noticed like people trying to climb the ladder. Like it reminded me of spirituality when I joined but luckily I didn't speak to anyone. I didn't want to go for lunch with anyone. I just wanted to see the guy who was potentially helping other people in a way. And I wanted to be helped myself and to save myself because I was going crazy, right? And yeah, and when he said that there was nothing to seek, and like, why are you doing that? Like, you know, and he said, do not, you know, worship the messenger, because throw the messenger, sit in their seat. And because you are already that, you are born, you are alive. There is a sense of aliveness. I would like to ask you, what do you feel it is that drives that body and the words, you know, the words out of your mouth or whatever? Like, you know, what does it?
What is driving the words out of your mouth right now?
I presume just the life or life essence of their life. Yeah.
Does it matter? I don't ask myself the question. The words come out. I'm not sitting here going, what is driving the words out? I don't care.
Yeah.
The words come out. And it's not important. It's not important to me.
No.
Now, you're referring to a person, I'm assuming not Julian Assange, who was saying those things. You're talking about somebody else, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, it's always been in vogue to be a little bit of an abrasive type of teacher who says, oh, there's nothing to follow, all of that. So these kinds of messages have been around for eons. Nothing new about it. Even what I'm saying, there's nothing new about it. What maybe appeals to people is that I'm not saying it because it's been said before.
Yeah.
Okay? Nothing that I say is being said because somebody else said it. That's not the reason. I'm saying it because that's what's coming out of my mouth. That's genuinely what I feel. This is genuinely what I've experienced. And everything I say comes from direct experience. Some of it resonates. Some of it may not. It doesn't matter. That's just what's emerging from here, this place, right?
Yeah.
So none of it is really tailored to get a specific response out of the person. It's just what is, right? Now, when you're talking about you joining the political party and then realizing there's these power hierarchies, that's going to be everywhere. That's going to be in the corporate world. That's going to be in the nonprofit world. That's going to be in the UN. That's going to be in Julian Assange's party. That's going to be in any spiritual community. It's going to be anywhere human beings group together. Why? Because fundamentally, we are primates. We're monkeys. Now, I'm not going to go to the extent and say that's all we are and that everything is governed by purely a biological standpoint. I believe there's more to it. But fundamentally, we are driven by some very, very primal desires, all right? Primal fears. And that fundamentally is a fear of survival. Now, if you look at most primates, most chimpanzees, they have very complex social hierarchies, and they're constantly trying to fit in somewhere, because the larger the numbers, the safer the group, the better chance of each individual survival. That's just, we're programmed that way. So we're always going to seek that. The only program that can override that is the truth-seeking program. And it's almost like an anomaly. This is the only species that has this, the human species. They're willing to question something that may be counterproductive to their ability to survive. Truth does not guarantee survival. In fact, it actually undercuts the imperative within us to survive. All right. So we have evolved to develop blinkers for a reason. Just like when the lion hunts, all it sees is the deer. It doesn't see what a beautiful day it is. It doesn't see the beautiful clouds in the sky. It doesn't soak in the environment of the Serengeti. It sees the deer because that's all it needs to see to get its meal. So it's genetically evolved to have a tunnel vision. Similarly, human beings have genetically evolved to have a more complex kind of tunnel vision. We've genetically evolved to have an ego, and all of this because this helps us in our social survival, right? So it benefits us to maintain a certain illusion in our minds, an illusion of what life is, an illusion of what reality is. It benefits us in order to survive as a species. But when you start perceiving into reality, you start peeling those things away. You're actually peeling away the tools that help you survive, which is why many people who have like an awakening or some deep sudden insight, they lose the motivation to hold a job or motivation to manage their families. These are things that anybody can do on automatic mode, but they start struggling with these basic survival skills because now they're getting too much information that's not relevant to survival, because now they're trying to understand the whole thing. Well, you don't need to know the whole thing to survive. You need to know a very little piece of it, right? So anytime you have an ideological structure, whether it be political or spiritual, the philosophy is just the icing on the top. All right. It's appealing to our higher minds, right? Like our cerebral cortex. But the meat of it is what is designed to support the lower part of our hemispheres of our brain, which is all about survival, that fear, that animal instinct. And so eventually, no matter how beautiful or noble the philosophy, you'll end up with the same structure underneath, those power hierarchies, those pecking orders that control that power. It's inevitable. There's no way to avoid it. And there's nothing wrong with that either, because these are human beings struggling to survive.
Yeah, it just, I kind of noticed that with spiritual communities instantly. So it was like sort of like an insight to me or something, because I didn't know how it worked, but reminded me of a political party or a cult. So you think you are special and but at the same time, I thought there was certain like unknowing. I thought I knew nothing, and it made me laugh because I finally realized I knew nothing, and it was kind of freeing, kind of freedom. But now, as you mentioned before, all these people coming from that perspective of they're not using their own words, but they repeat someone else's words nonstop. Like, okay, this message is, just out there. It's horrible. There's no one who speaks, and I feel there is too many of these people at the moment talking about all of this. They know everything, and they set themselves up as messengers. They love talking about non-duality. I presume they believe that once you break through the hypnosis of being identified, or whatever, people believe that you become a teacher, spiritual teacher, and they start teaching. How do you deal now with like at work? Can I ask this question? I know there is no before and after, but is it easier for you today or harder to deal with ordinary people in everyday life?
It's it easier or harder to deal with. Okay, let's put it this way. In the past, I used to like to deal with people. I found it hard to deal with people. All right, so I had social anxiety. I would want to be around people because I wanted to be appreciated by them. I would want to be the life of the party. I had a very extroverted personality in my youth. I was very popular in parties. Oh, Shiv is so clever. He can talk philosophy, whatever, right? Now, I don't like people, but I find it easy to be around. So it's kind of a paradox. I don't have a problem. I have no anxiety around people. It doesn't matter what kind of people they are.
Yeah.
I just don't seek people out because everyone comes with a certain amount of baggage, and then there's just so much energy spent dealing with the baggage in order to even have a contact with a person, right? So this is in social scenarios or whatever it might be. You know, it's like everybody comes with an armor, and you spend 90% of your effort trying to work the armor out in order to say, hi, this is me, nice to meet you. Most people are resisting that anyway. So you end up just having this very kind of superficial level of communication, which, I mean, I don't see too much value in it. Sometimes it has a utility to it. And if I need something, it's transactional, and that's fine. And work really is that, right? Work is a transaction. I go to work, I work remotely, but all my work, all my business conversation, everything has a purpose, because at the end of the day, there are certain transactions happening, and that is really the purpose of it. So as long as everybody understands the rules of the game, we can play whatever game we want. I have absolutely no problem with it. So do I struggle with any of that? I don't anymore. I used to once upon a time. I used to struggle with how fake the business world was, and I wanted it to be more authentic. I don't struggle with that anymore because I go into with the clear expectations of what I'm getting myself into. Once I have those expectations, then my expectations can't be disappointed. Then I know this is the sandbox I'm playing with until work is done, and then I'm playing in a different sandbox, right?
Mm. Yeah, I know, I understand when you say you don't like people. Like I didn't have these little friends in my life ever, but at the same time, when I'm with people, I enjoy that as
Yeah,
well, you know.
yeah.
But
Like
yeah.
I don't dislike you. Right? I'm enjoying this conversation. But
Yeah.
what I mean is, I don't I don't dislike individual persons, but I dislike people in general. When I say dislike, I don't have some kind of burning hatred for them.
Mm.
It's just that I would prefer, if I had given a choice, of spending time with an ocean versus a group of people, I would go for the ocean.
Yes.
Or spending time with animals instead of people, I might go for the animals. So I'm just saying there are other creatures on this planet that take precedence over people when it comes to me, right? So
the nature, animals, because we are the nature, and people are probably we are not close to the nature in a way anymore, because we just get, hooked up with all these daily things, and we forget who we are, and that's the problem. And we are so fake, we don't know who we are.
well, that's exactly it, because
Yeah.
nature is authentic. It can't help but be what it is. It can't help but represent itself as it is.
Yeah.
The people I appreciate in my life, like my family, the reason I appreciate having my relationships with them is because we're very honest with each other. We're very transparent. We're very open.
Mm.
And that means something, because then there's direct interaction. We're not, translating. We're speaking things as they are. So there's a few handful of people in my life that I'm able to do that with, some friends as well. But for the most part, interacting in society, it's mostly transactional, and that's fine, because in the past I was constantly seeking, not just seeking myself, but seeking meaning. You see, seeking meaning in work, seeking meaning in people, seeking meaning in everything that happens around me. Now I don't seek that meaning anymore, because I know that all that meaning comes from within me, right? It's purely intrinsic. Meaning is a purely intrinsic phenomenon. It's not out there like, a leaf or a tree is waiting to be plucked. Right? Meaning is not a Pokemon Go game where you go around collecting meaning characters. That's not how it works. Meaning emerges from a person. And so I think we've been so oriented to seeking meaning outside. That's why people are seeking, because they think everything that they need, that they're lacking, is somewhere external, and they must therefore go and seek it. They have to do something for it to happen. And this is what I mean, circling back to what you were saying a little bit earlier. I think you mentioned that you had this feeling of dislike for yourself. Am I incorrect in saying that?
Yeah.
I know I've experienced that too. And I can tell you that the vast majority of humanity feels that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a distinct sense of distaste or self-loathing within a human being, driven by shame, driven by guilt, driven by alienation. And all this then drives, that is the energy. That is the only energy driver is seeking. And that drives people to then seek it outwards through relationship, through wealth, through spiritual experience. You're constantly seeking it outward because you have begun by already shunning yourself, saying, I do not deserve love. I do not deserve power. I do not deserve to be validated. Therefore, now I'm going to go and seek the experiences that will give me love, that will empower me, that will validate. You will never find those experiences. They do not exist, right? I can maybe put a uniform on you and give you a baton and say, now you're a policeman, and I give you authority and power. And it may feel when you put on that uniform that you have it. The moment you take it off, you won't. And deep down inside, you'll know it's artificial. It's artificial authority, artificial love, artificial power.
Yeah, you did mention artists in your last article you wrote. I like that, about Heath Ledger. And can you just touch base on that, what you wrote there? I mean, I really like what you said, because mentioned another actor who remained in his role even like during the whole, movie.
Yeah, that was Daniel Day-Lewis. So that's a style of acting called method acting, I believe. Don't quote me because I'm not an expert on dramatics, but method actors tend to stay in the role in order to truly embody what that role requires. They're not just switching on and off. They like to immerse themselves in that mindset. Now you think about a guy like Daniel Day-Lewis. You've probably heard of him, Last of the Mohicans,
totally.
Gangs of New York. Yeah, he's been multiple time Oscar nominated, probably awarded as well. And each movie he's playing an entirely different role. One movie I think he was deaf in one movie. Another movie, he's a psychopath playing Bill the Butcher Poole in Gangs of New York. And each of these characters are clearly not who these people are in real life. He's not a psychopath. And yet these people are able to embody that mindset and then bring their own self into that role, their own self authentically into a character that they're clearly not, right? And that is the art of living, as far as I'm concerned, because our ego identities, and we all have them, we each have an ego. Our ego identity is that mask, is that persona, right? And the spiritual misunderstanding, like the one aspect of spiritual understanding which says the ego is a false self is correct. It is a false self. It's a mask. It's a costume. It's a social identity. You need it to interact in society. That's the only way you'll be accepted by society and kept safe by society. So you need it. You need on the stage to have a character. But they then assume that what they need to do is somehow purify that character. They have to dissolve the character or align the character with who they really are. Well, that's bizarre. Why would you want to change your costume to look just like you? It's a costume. It's supposed to be something entirely different. That would be like Daniel Day-Lewis saying, oh, Bill the Butcher, he's not who I really am in real life. I want to play myself in Gangs of New York. Well, that doesn't fit. That story is a completely different time. And a guy like Daniel Day-Lewis's character would be irrelevant in Gangs of New York. We need you to play Bill the Butcher, not Daniel Day-Lewis, right? So a good actor doesn't play themselves. A good actor can play any role. Doesn't matter. Because they understand the role is not who they are, right? This, similarly, understanding the ego is not who we are. It's our character identity. Then we don't need to meddle with that ego. We don't need to dissolve it, kill it, change it, purify it, make it more lovely, humble, noble, nothing. We can be a raving lunatic for all I care. That's not who I am. So I can play that role in an inspired fashion because I'm free to do so. And that is what I mean by authentic expression. You can only be authentic when you're no longer convinced that your identity is that character. You realize your identity resides in your own sense of being. You're free to be there. Then you can play this role of Shiv or Sabina, whoever, freely, without having to alter it. Like I get people go, oh, you sound so angry, so therefore you must not be silent and peaceful inside. I'm like, so what if I'm angry? I don't care about the role I play. I'm not trying to tailor it. You understand? I'm not trying to tailor it to suit your sensitivities so that you won't be offended by it. I don't give a shit about offending you. I'll offend you all day if I have to. But I'm not trying to offend you either. I'm just saying what I say and playing this role that I play. And some people love it, some people hate it, and that's life.
To me, maybe the most difficult kind of people I had to work with were offensive people, like people who got offended or who got defensive. You just can't work with them. You can't reason with them because whatever you say to them, I had a couple of interviews a few days ago, and I gave them an example of that. I said, you just can't, whatever you say to them, they get defensive and they make it worse. So you just have to work out the way how to approach them because it's almost impossible. Whatever you say, they start attacking or saying, oh, this is not what I meant, or you just can't speak to them, and you go, do I text them a message? You just can't reason.
Well, this is what I meant. This is what I meant. People are too much work, you see? This is what I mean. Too much baggage, too much to try and figure out before you even get to the point of what we're saying. And unfortunately, so happens that our culture has moved in that direction wholesale, right? Essentially, in the West, we're seeing that, the political correctness and all of that. There's this culture where offending someone is equivalent to attacking them. It literally has become that, where saying something rude is considered a microaggression, right? And then you take a microaggression one step further, it can be a microassault. You have a microassault, like one step from there, it's a crime. So now we've basically, step by step, where the line on the sand is shifting. And what people are finding is, if they haven't shifted with the line, they end up on a completely different side of the line. 20 years ago, you might never have thought you're an offensive person. You might have thought that you're a very polite and kind and courteous person. 20 years later, you're the most offensive person around. You haven't changed the way you interact, but the line has shifted, and you suddenly find yourself on the other side of it. So does that mean everybody has to shift along with the line? Why? That may not be authentic to who you are.
Yeah.
So this is it, is that there's a hypersensitivity in society at large, but especially within spiritual culture. Ironic, because spiritual people are supposed to be above all this shit, but they're the ones most triggered by it. Where if you attack someone's sacred cows, it really, really bothers them, right? And that is primarily because the kind of people who begin to seek out the spiritual path have already been jaded in some way. They're already hypersensitive. They're already hurt. They're already traumatized. Something is driving that fervent seeking, right? This is what I said in the beginning. The seeking energy is driven by a sense of lack. And that lack is created by alienation, feelings of self-loathing, all of that. So they're already feeling that. So when you have somebody who's that sensitive, then any word can trigger it, right? It's like taking somebody, like if I touch your hand, it's not going to bother you with my finger. But if you're a burn victim, with third-degree burns, and then I touch you, you're going to scream in pain. because your skin is that inflamed and sensitive. So you imagine these people, their souls are inflamed and sensitive. And the slightest thing will trigger them, trigger the pain, trigger the trauma. The fact is, I don't really care. I'm just going to say what I have to say anyways. Right.
Yeah. You just, you know, you can't do anything about it. But I you know, to me, I also noticed that some spiritual figures, they would say, okay, how to fix anger. To me, anger is just like a wind or tsunami. It comes and goes. It arises now. Like it no longer hits the center. In the past, yes, anger, maybe it increased my blood pressure in the past. But today, when anger arises, if I snap at my loud neighbors, it's just the words come out of my mouth and it's practical. It's like response. Just these burns that you mentioned before, you know, if you know, touch me, and if I'm hurting, I might punch you. I don't know what will come, you know, as response. It's no longer reaction, but it's like a natural response. That's how I see it. And I think anger is quite healthy, can be quite healthy, because not only from perspective of trying to, you know, share the truth with people, and that can shake them. I find often, sometimes they get shaken, like they just wake up to themselves. They get out of that sleepiness, you know, just wake up to yourself. It's like if someone is sick with something and you keep telling them that such and such can help you, vitamin D can help you for, you know, for whatever, they won't hear you till the day they get really crooked, you know, really sick, and the body says do something about it. They might do something about it. It's the same with this message. Maybe life needs to hit them harder, hit them harder to, you know, get through them. To me, like, you can walk on the street, get hit by a brick, and all that might dissolve. The hypnosis, the hypnotism, that which probably happened to some people, you know, they had some accident or whatever, and then all of a sudden there was no that ego, whatever it is, like a brick wall inside them or whatever, congested energy, I don't know how you call it. And they just understood that life is for living. And they didn't, you know, that brick didn't say, oh, I'm your guru. It didn't claim that, like, I hit you and I'm your guru now. You need to worship me. But people would worship even the brick that hit them. And, you know, so it's still all egotistical, I'd say. I mean, there is no such a thing as ego, but there is also, I agree with, what's his name? Ramesh. He used to say towards the end that there's ego everywhere, and in a way, I don't, like, something has to move us. Like, you watch animals, you watch a cat dipping the, you know, little mouse in the water and torturing it. You don't know what it is. It's just natural. So
well,
yeah.
Well, see, the way I think of ego is a very functional tool. Okay, rewind a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The one tool that has helped human beings survive as a species for millions of years. We were not the strongest species. We were not the fastest species. We can't climb for shit. We could have easily become extinct, right? But what helped us survive? Obviously, these things between our ears, but our ability to make stories, you see. We stole stories. Right now, my daughters are learning Norse mythology. My older daughter is learning Norse mythology in school. Not as a fact thing, as a historical understanding of mythologies of the world. She's learning about Odin and Asgard and Thor and Loki and Norse mythology. What made the Vikings so effective? What made them conquer most of Europe? Was their belief that they're going to Valhalla. They're going to dine with the warriors. And the greatest gift, the greatest reward in life is a noble warrior's death. All right. So now you take that mentality, you spread it among groups. Those groups conquer, they get wider, that belief spreads. And this is how species have been able to expand, proliferate. And so it's a strategy that has worked for human beings for millions of years. We're not going to give up that strategy. It's the best strategy yet. So we're story makers. We know we need the stories. We need the stories to survive, because the story then leads to belief, and belief bonds us together, right? Now, every story needs characters. How can you tell a story without characters? That would be a fucking boring story. So now we need a Shiv, we need a Sabine, we need a guru, we need seeker. We needed this. We needed that. We need all these characters. They're the ones who make up the story. And so these character roles are our egos. Right? But who is playing that character? That's essentially the point, is who is playing that character. Behind the story and behind the characters of that story, all of which is a strategy to help us survive, is the organism themselves, the being. And that being is actually not the story and not the character. It's something beyond that. And if you have a deep sense of it, which is nothing amazing, it's nothing mystical, it's something that every infant has a sense of its own being, and you're rooted there, then all of this just seems like a great fantasy you're living out. This life, it's like being a part of a great big party, this great drama, and everybody's playing a role. Great, it's fun. Why not? There's no problem here. It's a great way to spend 80 years. But if you forget and then you become convinced that there's a reality to this character, and a reality to the story, and this story must be right because that is wrong, and which history have we captured correctly? That's all political debate and conflict is about. That is all spiritual debate and conflict is about. That's all religious and debate and conflict is about, is stories conflicting with each other and characters claiming, no, our story is the real story. Well, guess what? None of them are the real story. You guys completely missed the point.
Yeah.
But that's all the ego is a role that I'm playing. It doesn't actually exist. It's like a costume that I put on. But a costume without a person is just a piece of fabric hanging on a hanger, right?
I actually like that. And again, going back to what you said about Heath Ledger and similar, like maybe actors from Superman are similar. I think some of them, they really got hooked into these roles that they probably couldn't get out of them in a way. And I read some of this, they were wondering what happened to these Superman characters, three, four of the actors actually. Something completely went wrong. They went like nuts, some of them, and I don't know whether someone died or all these things happening. And I thought maybe they just couldn't get out these roles they were playing. I mean, this is interesting for my friends, actors that I know. This is probably what they have to deal with.
It's 100%.
Yeah.
Why do celebrities, why do actors, why do rock stars, why do comedians? Large number of them have substance abuse problems. Why is that? One is access, one is money, one is the fast and loose lifestyle, definitely. But the other is the tremendous pressure it takes to constantly morph your identity. You and I don't have to do that in everyday life. I show up being the same Shiv to work every single day. I don't have a new role I have to play every time. I'm not Bill the Butcher one day and then, the Joker another day, right? I'm Shiv who goes to work every day. It's fairly consistent. So I can play this role because after a while it becomes quite, through practice, it's easy to do. But these people are testing the boundaries of this game of self and ego, being and the identity, and this back and forth, and they're pushing the boundaries by playing roles that really, I mean, can you imagine being a psychopath? The headspace you would have to occupy. Now, when a person like Heath Ledger, and I'm purely speculating here, becomes the Joker and is occupying the mindset of a psychopath, well, his body doesn't know if he's playing a role. His body's now responding to his psychopathic thoughts, his psychopathic moods, all of that, right? And that must take a toll on a person. So I think these people are individuals who take it to that limit by starving their bodies and dropping, like Christian Bale for The Machinist went down to 90 pounds. And for a more recent movie, he was up to like 250 pounds. This is testing the limits of the mind and body, which is, I think, admirable. I think it's great that people are doing it. But what it also goes to show us is that the ego is so malleable. You can literally become somebody else entirely if you really want to. That your ego isn't who you are, and so it can be adjusted. Now, the spiritual community, what they do is they're very successful. Spiritual culture is very successful in morphing that ego into this very comatose, blank, beatific, kind of person. But again, that's a manipulation of the mask and all of that. Where they miss the point is that they believe that's what all of this is about, is tailoring the ego into this calm, peaceful, passive, placid state, which isn't it at all.
It just, it's interesting because it came to me before how these people, some of these people who love teaching non-duality, you see the pictures and they all blissed out, like there is this massive smile on their faces, every picture, you know, they're so like, oh, they live in the bliss or whatever, giving this false information, misleading people, obviously for a reason, for a profit. Maybe it's easier to, you know, talk non-duality than to work in an office. I don't know, you know. So
I mean, it's essentially whatever each person is drawn to doing. At the end of the day, most people I see need to be a part of a culture in order to feel that they are progressing in some way in life, because they need the cultural markers, right? Like in the business world, your markers are okay. You go from your worker level, you go to lower management, your middle management, upper management, then you get into the director level, you move into vice president, and you go into the C-suite, right? And then you become the chief technology officer, chief financial, and then maybe you become the president of a company. It's great. Then one day you might be invited to be on the board of directors of a big publicly traded company. Great. I mean, you're advancing. These are the markers. And this is how people, oh yeah, he's progressing in life or she's progressing in life. Well, in spirituality, we don't have those markers. We need different markers, right? Oh yeah, now the way his eyes are, he's hit that milestone. He's got the gaze down. Oh, he's not angry anymore. Oh, he's achieved milestone number 2. Or he's now saying these words that are very meaningful and sound true. Well, he's hit milestone number 3. And this is how you go. And then the community validates, yes, you're progressing. Oh, now you must be awakened, or you must have attained. It's all bullshit, right? It's just arbitrary markers set up by the culture to make you feel that you're going somewhere. The fact is you're not going anywhere. Exactly where you've always been. You know, you always are where you are. I'm not talking about geographically or spatially. I'm talking about within yourself. You're always where you are. And that's always where you will ever be. This here now, right? Not to make a thing out of this here now, but factually, this here now. It's the only place we can ever be. And so trying to get somewhere, all of that is just feeding your ego, feeding your sense of identity, right? That's all it is.
Yeah. It's same as any other materialistic achievement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I see no distinction whatsoever between spiritual culture and any form of materialistic culture. It's the same thing, exactly the same thing. You're just calling it spiritual. Bullshit. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a label. You're literally doing the same thing. It's an industry. These seminars and conferences like Sand and stuff are trade shows. You go there to listen to keynote speakers. You pay for it. And it's like anything else. You might as well go to Tesla conference.
Yeah, it could be, I reckon it would be more useful probably in the practical life.
You might come out with an electric car, right?
Exactly. Or here's something like you can probably do to make your life easier to look after your family and have, you know, be better off financially a bit in a way. Yeah, I don't know.
But you know what? Sabine?
Yeah.
They say, and am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, excellent. Yeah.
Okay. Have you heard the phrase "there's a sucker born every minute"?
Yes.
Well, it's a fact. There is a sucker born every minute, and guess what? Capitalism, or consumer society, is essentially based on that paradigm. Is you're going to use resources. You're going to capitalize on resources. Okay. Whether that's natural resources, whether that's energy resources, or whether that's the ignorance of the people, that's a resource. Stupidity is a resource. It's a renewable resource. You're going to capitalize on it in order to benefit. So if there are ignorant people around who are blissful in their ignorance, they want to remain ignorant. They want to remain in the warm cocoon of beliefs. They don't want out. They say they want out, but they don't really want out. Then give it to them. Give it to them.
Yes.
And that's what these gurus are doing. So, in a sense, yes, I'm against the culture, but I understand why it happens. It's why every culture happens. And why shouldn't it? At the end of the day, none of this truly has any meaning from any, rock hard cast in stone sense. So cultures will create their own meanings. And this is what this, neo-Advaitic and mainstream spiritual industry has done, is created this arbitrary, superficial meaning under the guise of really consumerism, right? Oh, sorry, the opposite way around. Under the guise of spirituality, it's a consumerist mentality.
Yes. Well, some have admitted that they employ people, they've got ABN number, they have a business name, and because they earn millions and millions. So apparently a couple of them admitted that they're doing this for profit, because that's where so I think Spira and what's his name, Adyashanti guy from America, they admitted they're doing it for business.
And that's great. And this is what I've said, is that if you come out and say this is a business, well, then this is not education, right? Two different things.
Yeah.
A business teaching is all about graduating your students. So when you go to school and Sabine goes to 8th grade, her teacher is going to ensure she goes to 9th grade. If Sabine fails, probably means either Sabine didn't study or the teacher sucks. If Sabine fails again, chances are the teacher really sucks. But the teacher's job is to graduate you, not keep you in the same place for years and years and years. But as a business, you're no longer a student, you're a customer of the business. As a business, the model is to retain you. As Apple, I want Sabine to keep buying the next iPhone. Why would I want her to graduate past Apple? Never. I want you to stay with my product for the rest of your life. I want repeat customers. So now if spirituality was marketed as a business, truly, I would have zero problem with it, because I'd say, yeah, it's a business. And so if people want to go as clients and customers of this business and give the business money, and hey, people pay for all kinds of experiences every day. In Japan, Japan is a very bizarre country. I've lived there for 8 years. I love the country, but some weird ass shit happens there. So there's this culture called the otaku culture. It's a culture of young men and women who never leave their homes. All right, all they do is play video games all day long, and so they don't know what human contact feels like. So there are actually these establishments where you can go and pay money to place your head in a girl's lap as she strokes your hair, and that's it. That's all that they do there. You place your head and she strokes it, and you feel that human touch. For 10 minutes, you pay them $200 and you leave. There's a market for everything. Why not that, right? So here is someone stroking your head, Adyashanti is stroking your ego. It's all good. You can pay for it. I have no objection to it, but call it what it is. And that's all this is about, is call it what it is. Don't be hypocritical about it, because that bothers me more than anything else. Is hypocrisy, right? Call it what it is. So I'm glad if Rupert Spira and Adyashanti are saying we're actually doing this for profit, I got no problem with that.
I thought fair enough. Finally someone said it. That I don't know if it's true. Like I read it, someone said it. Like apparently they all said it, but I don't follow them, so I'm not sure. Now
they're adapting to the sign of the times.
Yeah,
they're surviving. They're going to reinvent themselves.
Yeah,
they're going to reinvent as the culture shifts. The smart ones reinvent their identities. They'll go from being old school, your really master types, to being your hip. Yeah, there's no real thing as gurus, to I'm actually a businessman. They'll adapt because they realize, hey, we don't want to lose our customers. So now if this customers have become more awake to what's going on, we'll become more hip. Sure. Not surprising.
I believe also that some of them go too far, and I reckon it needs to be regulated, that industry, like every other industry. That's how I see it. It needs to have some regulations about whatever sexual offenses, or whatever else. I don't know, whatever they're doing over there.
They've been trying to regulate the Catholic Church for how many years now?
That's true.
How's that worked out, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, nobody really cares about the spiritual industry in the mainstream, because to them it's just another cultish whatever phenomenon out there, right? It's when you have these stories of abuse and things come out, like it was with Sogyal Rinpoche and a number of Zen masters, and in India it's been happening for 2,000 years. It's like, if it doesn't happen, people, what? There hasn't been abuse, right?
Yeah.
They're surprised. But that's also because of the nature of what we're discussing here. It's all based on a cult of personality to begin with. This teacher-student dynamic is a cult of personality dynamic. The moment it's about a person and not about a general philosophy, then all the power has already been given. Now it's a question of roll of the dice. Do you get lucky and have a benevolent person who's not going to abuse that power? Or do you get unlucky and find somebody who is going to abuse that power? It's human nature to abuse power. So chances are you will be unlucky. The odds are stacked against you.
True.
The moment you give your power away, right?
Yeah. I was going to say also, it's not just about like that kind of abuse, but there is another abuse, psychological abuse, I'd say, because I've heard them saying these people, like Bentinho, I don't know, and similar that I've encountered, they basically give people advice, people who are really suicidal and really, how to say, really vulnerable. They get advised by these people as if encouraged to go ahead. And I don't know, there was a woman, I don't know what her name is lately, they talked about her, whereas her clients committed suicide, few of them, or I don't know, after it happened with Bentinho, but no one seems to care, and because they always seem to have more protection, they're protected by these, seekers.
Well, when you take your life advice from a 15-year-old who is still in the midst of puberty, what do you expect is going to happen? I mean, we're talking about, I know who you're talking about. I know the other person you're also talking about. I'm not going to mention names. I'm not going to target people because I don't believe in that. And besides, I'm not really interested in starting any sort of feud with any individual whatsoever, because it's not about the individual. Fundamentally, it's about the culture. I've said that from day one. But the point is, the reason these people appeal is not because of their wisdom. It's because of something much more animalistic. Youth, good looks, some kind of charisma. That's what draws people in. And then this philosophy is the bullshit veneer that then is what it becomes about. The thing is, all of these people, I mean, there's a lack of emotional maturity to begin with, right? And then it becomes a power structure where we're constantly trying to then protect the individual against it. Now, in any following, any group, there are going to be people who are going to be emotionally vulnerable. There are going to be people who are on the precipice of, some kind of self-harm or self-destruction. The point is, do you want to be taking your advice from people who are going to tell you, okay, well, this is what you should or shouldn't do about it? I don't think, any human being is in a position to be able to give any kind of guidance of that kind to anyone. But these are people who are doing it because there's no sense of responsibility. There's no sense of maturity. There's no sense of actually having lived a life and gone through the hard knocks and matured and become wise in that process. It's fast food wisdom, right? And you see that not just in spirituality now, you see it everywhere. It's rampant entrepreneurship happening where 20-year-olds are starting businesses left, right, and center. A lot of that is, good energy, but a lot of that is just driven by this culture of self-obsession. They call it the century of the self. It's also the term youpreneur, right? The term youpreneur is the entrepreneur whose brand is the person, right? So now it's no longer about the product. It's not a quality product. It's not a quality service. It's me. I am the product, even in business. And people are buying the product because they're buying it because they idolize the person creating the product. It's happening everywhere. It's not just in spirituality. So it's a mark of a decadent society. Western civilization is in decay because it has become so consumed with first world problems. It has lost all perspective on life and the true trials and tribulations we have. And it's become, this kind of very decadent, similar to how the, British aristocracy was at a certain point, right? Where, or Marie Antoinette going, oh, well, if they don't have bread, why don't they eat cake? Complete disconnect from reality. And that's what's happening across society.
Yeah. It's unfortunately it's like Instagram and stuff. Even that is dangerous for young people. But there obviously there's no money in recognizing that, and young girls, they'll have to keep up with all these pretty girls or filtered girls, whatever. I mean, you don't know what's real. They don't even, as you said, they don't worship product, but the person they like. If I go to my industry, which is like latest one I've done, which is personal training. You see a person advertising their figure, they don't show you what they do to get there, but they just the filtered figures, get a shot from the right side so she looks perfect, and get a dog with you. It's all about the dog, not about me. It's all that kind of lies.
And so
Yeah.
Yes, and so social media, Instagram, Facebook, they're already set up to create cults of personality. And everybody's Instagram profile is a mini cult of personality. And you have your followers and you're like, it's all a cult. Why are they following you? Because of you. They're obsessed with you and who you are and who you represent. So everyone's a mini celebrity. Everything's a mini cult of personality. And that's what's driving this self-obsessive culture. Right? So we see it we've seen it in spirituality long enough that we know the tricks of the game, but it's filtered into everything.
And to continue from here with today's world, which is, call it like a vogue or world of identification. You did say it, but to expand on that a bit, because it's quite a big issue today, I'd say. I didn't like Osho as a whatever his cult, but he said quite a few good things that I like read in the past as ignorant person. But he said something about how people give names and labels to countries, continents, rivers, oceans, and even the space. He said they cut the space and said, that's my airspace. You got into my airspace, and therefore they create more separation and more identity. And, my religion, your religion, my culture, your culture, my gender, your gender. This is just me adding now to all of this that is going on today. Like, to me, it seems that this is almost a deliberate, because psychologists must know for sure, and people who write the propaganda, because there are people working on this 24/7, propaganda. Media, they work on media propaganda, and they know for certain, but they keep telling someone that your religion and your race is more important than anyone else's, or they've done that to you, you should attack them. Isn't it supposed to create more hatred than kind of unicity in a way? Like, I see it as deliberate, as they're pretending. I watched Netflix a little bit, like I turned it off. Like I watched it like for 3-4 days and I turned it off. I couldn't, it was making me sick. It just, there's no quality there at all. Even the German movies now today, it's all changed. There's no quality. It's about making sure that balance has been made, that, races are mentioned, and to me, it creates more hatred. Like, I never looked at people that way before, but when they keep mentioning someone being transgender nonstop into my face, it makes me angry and it makes me really sick. It's not that I hate these people, but it makes me really angry. Like, this is obviously, I don't know if you see this as deliberate. I'm mentioning this because it's kind of, to me, it's more identification. Why identify?
Well,
I don't
okay,
know.
deliberate. That's an interesting word. I would say it's not deliberate, because if it was deliberate, it would be intelligent. I don't find any of these social phenomena intelligent. I find them reactive. They're emotional and irrational for the most part. Um, Rewinding a little bit to Osho and what he said about we're dividing space, we're dividing this, we're dividing that. I think that's true, but it's also a very naive, childish way of looking at it. Fact is, division is what drives society. And as I was mentioning before, the way social hierarchies have evolved, not just with us, but starting from time of being primates, is through war and division and tribes overwhelming other tribes. And that's how we've grown and expanded as species, right? Eventually, through conquering, collaboration is achieved. That's just the blood and guts history of the human race. Good, bad, it's not the point. The point is it happened. That's the way we've gotten to this point where we're able to have this conversation over an iPhone. So there's steps that have led up to it, not steps that we are proud of, but steps that happen anyways. But what we're seeing now is just new forms of tribalism. The sands are shifting. New stories are usurping older stories. The power dynamic is shifting. But this is always going to happen. And each time it happens, the people who had made peace with the status quo and the power dynamics the way they existed before will be resistant and pissed off because they're like, why are they shifting? Why are these new stories coming in? They don't make any sense. Well, guess what? Even your stories didn't make sense. Neither do those stories. They're stories. Stories are not supposed to make sense. That's like me trying to convince my daughter that Odin isn't real. Yeah, of course, she knows Odin is real. If she thought Odin was real, this would be a problem. Because then she would identify as a Norseman, and I have to try to tell her, that's not your identity. You're not a Viking. You're a little girl. But thankfully, she's not making that mistake. But this is it, is that when you have a disenfranchised group, that means their story's not working. It's not working in the social game. That tribe is being neglected. The moment they have the chance, they're going to then try to seek power, to shift the power setup, to upset the apple cart. And when the apple cart gets upset, obviously the people who were enjoying the privilege up until that point will be pissed. Oh, but why is this happening? And this doesn't make any sense. And we call it propaganda. It is propaganda. All propaganda is just a new story. That's all propaganda is, a new story. And the reason propaganda is repeated is because that new story needs to get out and into people's head. We need to get rid of the old indoctrination and put some new indoctrination into you. And so, like Jehovah's Witnesses, they're going to go around thumping their Bibles or their little manuals of whatever it is they believe in to try and convince you. But the point is, I see that and I'm not surprised by any of it because that is just history repeating itself over and over and over again. At some point, the status quo is going to get complacent, it's going to grow decadent, and something is going to want to fill that power vacuum. And the people who are going to want to fill that power vacuum are the disenfranchised people because they're hungry for power. The people who've had the power are fat and complacent, so they don't have that hunger to retain that power anymore. They're easily overwhelmed. And this is what we're seeing. I mean, I'm not a fan of political correctness culture whatsoever. I'm not a fan of what's happening. I'm not a fan of what the liberal far left is doing by any stretch of imagination, but I understand it. I'm not surprised by it. And I understand this is human nature. And this is how human beings evolve. Our stories that help us expand as a species and continue on are not, for the most part, stories of love and light. They're stories of blood, lust, hatred, rape, pillage, conquering. Those are the stories. And when people in power finally completed whatever their agenda was, that's when everyone settled down and there are periods of peace and growth. And until something else comes along, and the next conqueror, and the next paradigm, and it's a destructive way, but that's how the creative process for humankind progresses.
Yeah. For me, the worst thing is like seeing children being heavily educated who are not fully grown, who are like 10 years old, to be honest. I spoke to my girlfriends who have little kids, and they are unhappy because they get told all the time that someone who identifies themselves as a girl, a boy, can be in the same change room as them. So my girlfriends didn't like that fact, for an instance. And what do you know when you're 9 or 10 about your gender, about the sex life? Do you talk to your parents about, like, it's a bit too much, I think. I really feel for kids. I disagree with this, and I think it's a bit sick. Yeah.
I again, this is an example of culture, right?
Yeah.
It's just an example of what is a true individual phenomenon versus a cultural phenomenon, and the pressure of conforming to a culture and convincing yourself that what you feel is what the culture actually wants you to feel. Two different things. It's a cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
And the people who are most susceptible to the pressures of culture are the people who are already feeling disenfranchised or lost or lacking in their life and all of that. It happens in all arenas of life. Right? But again, this is not something new. My wife grew up in communist Romania. She had to wake up every morning with this, I don't know, Vulcan freaking sign, and they had to stand at attention before every class, look at the picture of Nicolae Ceausescu, who was the dictator of Romania, and they had to pledge allegiance to the great leader, Ceausescu. I mean, my wife is not that old. She's 40, a year younger than I, and she has clear memories of doing that in Romania. Indoctrination has been happening through history. There wasn't a single period in human history where indoctrination didn't happen. This is just a new brand of indoctrination. It's a form of indoctrination we are uncomfortable with because we don't understand it. And we say, oh, this is indoctrination. Well, guess what? Everything is indoctrination. It really is. Everything we believe about history that's happened, everything we read in our history books is a form of indoctrination. Today, the Queen died. People are upset. Canada is probably going to declare a national holiday, all of this. I mean, it's sad she died, but I mean, she's 86, she lived a full life, whatever. Yeah. But why do we have this strong response to this phenomenon? Is because at some level, there's an indoctrination. If the Sheikh of Oman died, we're not going to be sitting here talking about it, but we're going to talk about it if the Queen of England died. Why? Because at some point, history has become Eurocentric. That's a fact. It's not good, not bad. It's the way it is.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be bias. There's going to be bias on this side. There's going to be bias on that side. There's going to be prejudice on this side. There's going to trying to even out prejudice is what the new phenomenon is. Let's try to counterbalance the prejudice that I think is coming from this person by giving a little bit of extra here and overcompensating. That generally doesn't work at all. Yeah. Right? It's a failing strategy. You can try doing it. You could put, X number of non-Caucasian Vikings into a show. It's going to look a little bit ridiculous. Go ahead and do it. We'll still watch the show. But that's not going to solve your problem. It's a very superficial Band-Aid solution that may make you feel like, oh, you've done something meaningful, but you haven't at all. These are human dynamics. And guess what? We will never truly be equal as people because we will always hunger and struggle for power. And they will always form into tribes because we believe in the stories we're told. The only way to snap out of this whole thing is to see through that. Right? And most people are not interested in seeing through that. And that's perfectly their prerogative. That's their choice.
Yeah, I guess like living in a story, it's never ending. So unless we look into ourselves, and if everyone looked into themselves rather than outside, I presume it's change can come from here, not from I don't know, outside. The world is gonna be the way it is, fucked up, like in a way always, but it's the way how you see it. Yeah.
Personally, I think that if everyone became enlightened tomorrow, the human race would be wiped out in a few generations. I don't think we'd last. because we have no motivation to do the kinds of things it takes to survive.
Sure.
We have achieved 7 billion organisms on a planet that we now completely have dominated because we have been willing to deny reality in favor of our illusions. It's our illusions that have helped us proliferate and will help us finally then go populate and colonize other planets as Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos want to do and all of that. It will likely happen because we love our illusions, because we understand the illusions work. The illusions work. From a survival standpoint, the illusions work. Right? This is why we're so addicted to them. We're so attracted to them. Biologically, we crave our illusions.
So would you ever tell your kids to look into this message?
What message?
Like this, whatever, non-duality, say, whatever. I don't know what to say. Yeah.
You mean
into like natural, into the natural, whatever, naturalness.
No, it's weird. That's awkward. It's like telling my child, hey, there's this thing called walking. You want to learn how to do it? No, I know how to walk. So all of this only comes into play the moment you have inner conflict, inner questioning. So all of that has to start first. And if it starts, and I'm here purely speculating, you asked me what would you do if, so I'm coming up with an answer. Let's say my daughters came back and, oh, we're questioning our position, place in life, or who am I really, all of that. I would encourage them to question more. That's all I would do. I would not tell them anything. I wouldn't. And if they say, oh, I'm into this thing called non-duality, I really want to follow it. Okay. Go for it. Or I want to become a Christian and I want to, become a Catholic nun. All right. Let me know how that goes. What am I going to say? No? Why?
Yeah.
Why would I deny you that experience? Go for it. So as a parent, I'm not trying to, my goal is not to angle my children into preset direction of life. Yeah, in certain ways, like, yeah, be a good citizen, don't fuck over your neighbor, like basic things like that, of course. But in terms of generally, what to do, what to believe, how to perceive life, I'm not really interested in that. That's for them to figure out. And if their, true natures dominate and they're able to feel a certain level of confidence and self-certainty as they go through life, great. If they flounder and all of that and they need assistance or help, then I will step in to be able to guide them to reflect back on themselves as much as possible without telling them what to think. Right? I don't even know if what I think is right. I don't know that. But it doesn't have to be. It is just what I think, right? There's no right or wrong.
Yeah. I like people to hear this because, coming from you, you wouldn't push non-dualities, so to say, or whatever, this enlightenment idea, which is not there, onto
I wouldn't push.
kids. Yeah.
I wouldn't push any philosophy of life. No,
yeah.
It's a lens. Philosophy is just a lens.
True.
Yeah.
It's good probably to realize that really there is nothing to get. It might be like another kind of like a sort of insight for people to see there's nothing to get and it's nothing special, and that like you don't feel special, you don't feel your kids would benefit from it. Maybe they would benefit from you supporting them in what they're good at, like your daughter, whatever. Yeah.
Well, guess what? My kids will benefit from a lot of things in life, and they will also not benefit from a lot of things in life. That's just going to happen. The benefit and the gain and loss is inevitable. Okay. I'm not interested in ensuring that they only get benefit. That's bizarre.
Yeah.
Because that would just be taking out the whole point of what living is about. Is through this game of gain and loss, benefit and what's the opposite of benefit, not benefit. We learn. That's where wisdom emerges from, the juxtaposition of the two processes. Whereas the kind of people who try and skew only towards one direction have missed the entire point of the effort. Right? So I would not have any interest in doing that. However, there is a fundamental enjoyment, a fundamental abundance that comes from simply just being who you are and going through that process. And that's lost. The meat and bones of the whole process is lost when you try and achieve that benefit or achieve that. So.
The other day, I noticed someone asked you a question about the mind and peace of mind, and they mentioned like that chatter in the mind or anger. Then it came to my mind how Nisargadatta used to say. He said, "There is no such a thing as peace of mind, as its nature is to vibrate. So you can't get something to be peaceful, that which is meant to,
Now, when I use the phrase peace of mind, it doesn't mean a mind that is always peaceful, as in peaceful emotions, right? We're talking about emotionally here.
Yeah. No, you said it. He was referring to peace, but you said similar to Nisargadatta said that it doesn't matter if it's peaceful or
no,
not.
I know. But I use the phrase peace of mind because peace of mind to me is referring to, you want to call it inner peace or whatever you want to call it. It's just a pointer, but essentially that place where whatever is going on, whether it's on the outside or whether it's on the inside, the thoughts, the emotions, up, down, all of that, there's a layer beneath that's not perturbed by that, right? There's a layer of being or whatever you want to call it. These are just words.
Yeah.
But so what I wanted to convey to that reader, I believe, if I'm referencing the right article, is that they're like, oh, you're angry, so that you must not have a silent mind or something, some bizarre statement like that.
Yes.
What does that even mean?
Yeah.
First of all, why would I want a silent mind? Why would I want to lose my thoughts and my emotion? All these amazing, it's like a party in my head. Why do I want the party to end? Secondly, that means you equate your own self with what's happening there. That means that's as far as you've been able to recognize who you are, is at the level of your up and down emotions. I mean, come on. So what I'm talking about is the level of being that I'm at and that you're at and that everybody is at, for that matter, is not just at the level of the emotion. The emotion will grab our attention. The ideas and the beliefs grabs the attention, grabs awareness. And so it's laser focused on what's happening. But that doesn't mean what's happening is who you are, right? And so that was kind of my point there, was that, hey, I'm free. Yeah. I'm free to be any of these things. I don't mind being pissed off. I don't mind. Yeah, I'm from India, okay? Like a country of 1.2 billion people crammed together. We had to yell to get our point across because there's so many people around. So it's okay to yell and it's okay to get upset. Try not to kill somebody, but it's okay. Like, what's the big deal? Why are you so hung up on behavior? This whole spiritual culture is so hung up on behavior. That's why they're watching their teachers like fucking hawks.
Yes.
Oh, look at the way his eyes are. Look at the way his mouth is. Look at the way his arms are. Look at the way he holds a flower. Look at the way he turns his head. Look at the way he adjusts his ball sack. I mean, come on, you're obsessed with this guy's outward appearance with no clue what you're even focusing on, right?
I saw that stare, like expecting Shakti or something, whatever they call them, Shakti. But
the stare it's a pure power move. It's a pure power move. When human beings, we are in culture not to stare at each other. Staring is considered rude. It's considered, an invasion of a person's space, right? So let's say you're sitting on a subway, say someone's staring you down, you would see that as a sign of aggression.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the reason the teacher uses it is because subconsciously or consciously, they know that's the case. They're exerting power over you because the moment they stare at you, you will feel uncomfortable. And the moment you will feel uncomfortable, you'll say, wow, this person has power over me, therefore they must be powerful. It's like a fucking children's game. It's like kids in a kindergarten. It's immature. It's naive, and yet all these people are out there playing this stupid game and thinking they're very wise and deep for doing it.
Yeah, that's so true. And yeah, I've seen people sitting in the meetings for years and years and years. They obviously have all the knowledge which I didn't have, and whether it's intellectual knowledge, I don't know, and the words they had, and I didn't have any words. I had no clue what I was, told or what I was talking about. What I just asked about problems at work. What's going to happen next week if this guy is rude to me? And that's what my questions to the person I went to see. And but anyway, these people tend to say, what do you think? What would you say to these people who sit in the meetings for years, but to today's day, they still say, I'm in and out of it. I'm in and out of it. I've heard this statement more than once, whatever it means. Can you be in and out?
What is it?
Well, I presume, I don't know, something, maybe they thought they were enlightened or something.
Okay, well, I guess if they've decided that enlightenment is a thing, then I suppose you can be in and out of it like a house or a room. I don't know what that means, so I can't really comment. What I can tell you is that within myself, if I observe, I have myriad conscious states that I can occupy, right? There's the hypothetical, abstract state of playing with ideas. There's a more emotional state that then gets more into my body. There's a more relaxed state where there's not too much mental activity happening, and there's relaxation both in body and mind. And then there's an empty state where phenomenon dies down to very minimal. We call it the trance state, the theta state, the meditative state. But essentially, in that state, sometimes it can be imagery or whatever. There's a lot of creativity happens there. But these are different states. Like all minds can go through this. You can measure it on a brainwave scanner. So in that sense, if they want to say I'm in and out of this relaxed state of mental activity dying down, all right, I can understand that. But what is it? I'm not sure what they mean by it.
I presume out of hypnotism, whatever, being identified or something happening to you. Like, I don't know, for me, it's an easier way probably to explain this is like today, things arise, like anger arises, laughter arises from here, words arise by themselves, like spontaneously. In the past, I thought it all was happening to me. This was hitting imaginary center that I imagined in my head was like the center. So I presume that's what they thought, like not happening to them. Maybe they saw they were not a doer as a individual, sort of, I don't know.
So let me, so when I've had these conversations with people before, and some people are very adamant that no, their master was enlightened and they've seen that and they've felt the presence, and they even say, oh, the Shakti Pat was there, and I got this at the moment. You know what? Let me give everybody the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Let me say they're enlightened people, they're all of this. My fundamental question is, so what? So what? Exactly. Someone says, I'm enlightened. Okay, good for you. So what? Oh, I'm in and out of it. Wonderful. So what? I no longer suffer. Fantastic. So what? So what? So what does that mean? How does this apply to me? That's great for you. That's great. You drive a Porsche. So what? I don't drive a Porsche. I don't care about your Porsche. I care about my Toyota. So you're enlightened. Good. I don't care about your enlightenment. I'm not enlightened. I'm happy with that. So the point is, it doesn't matter. None of this, all these claims, whether they're unfounded or founded, or they're fantastical or not, at the end of the day, I reduce it down to this ordinary moment and say, so what? Because so what makes everything mundane, right? It makes everything ordinary. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you're Jeff Bezos and you made $300 million. No, $300 billion. I don't care. Good for you. Spend it. Enjoy that money. I don't have $300 billion. I'm going to enjoy the little money I have. Similarly, you've had these mind-blowing spiritual experiences. Yay, great, good for you. Go out there, buy yourself an ice cream. I don't give a shit. What do I care? How does that apply to me? It doesn't apply. That's your life. That's your experience. That's your perspective on what is happening in your head.
Mm.
It has
True.
absolutely nothing to do with it. So this is what I essentially always reduce it down to. No matter what the claim is really none of this is special in any way. And we are like children craving special experiences, like daddy, buy me the ice cream or buy me a lollipop or give me a special mystical experience. It's not going to satisfy you, even if you attain it. None of this stuff. Because guess what? Life continues.
Mm.
And the dynamics of life don't change. You're still going to have to feed your body. There are enlightened masters who freaking died in their diapers because nobody fed them anymore.
Mm.
They had to be literally fed. Ramana could barely walk. Have you seen pictures of him?
Mm.
His knees couldn't bend. He was walking with 2 sticks. I mean, that's the way you want to end up, buddy. You want to end up like Ramana on stilts? Come on, what are you aspiring to? How distorted is your perception here? You have a healthy body? Kudos to you. You have a healthy, somewhat healthy brain. You have food to eat on the table. You got some loved ones around you. The weather is nice today.
Mm.
You got a good life.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be more complicated than that?
Exactly. It's just a lot. Like, that's what I say. Can you get out of life and get into your life? That's what I tend to say. I don't know what else to say, because I've heard this more than once, like as a question, like, how do I stay in it? But you are in life. You don't get in it or out of it. Like, you can't get into the space or get out of the space. It's kind of just,
Right.
just, yeah.
And so you know what spiritual people are doing? They're trying to make this experience of the space more comfortable. And they're trying to get an assurance, a guarantee.
Mm.
From now on, it's going to be a good experience. Enlightenment is that guarantee.
Oh,
And I can tell you,
yes.
your readers or your viewers will watch this interview. There's going to be somebody who goes, "Oh, he's actually identified with a separate self, and this is why I've heard this a billion times."
Mm.
And what they don't understand is it doesn't matter. I've had those experiences. In my youth, when I went through a massive awakening and a shift in my head because I was so deeply depressed and suicidal for such a long time. I've had that experience where my mind went completely shut down mode. And 4 months of absolute silence. I've had that. It's just another experience.
Mm.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's nothing worth orienting your entire life around having again.
Yeah.
No. I would rather orient my life around, what I'm supposed to do tomorrow. Go to the grocery store, plan for dinner. That seems more meaningful to me than that. Right?
Yeah. Just basically you enjoy the life. You just love getting out and doing what you love doing. That's what it is. And being healthy is important. When you wake up in the morning, there's no pain. That's,
And if I wake up in the morning and there is pain, then that's going to be my new reality. And I'll work with the fact that there's this pain.
Mm.
Right? I don't see any grand purpose to life. The purpose of life is very obvious, is to live it. Right? We're here living. We don't know why. We don't know how. We don't know how we got here. But guess what? Here I am. Here we are, living.
Mm.
So live. Why does it have to be any more complicated than that? And yet, you watch 99.999% of minds cannot accept that. They cannot. There's something within that will violently resist and then run helter-skelter in every different path to try and find a reason why that is not true, even though they know it's true. But it's not enough, because if a person actually sits and admits and accepts that the only purpose to life is just to live, what do I build a story around? Nothing. You've given me nothing. You've not even given me a shred of a seed to build a story around. Give me something. Give me the purpose of life is to live and fill in the blanks. But no. Then what do I do? What do I do with myself? Give me something. I need a story. I need a purpose. I need a character. I need a drama. I need a plot. I need all these things because I don't know what to do with myself otherwise.
Mm.
And that's it. So
Yeah.
one of my readers had made the statement, all roads lead to Rome, as a kind of analogy to all paths lead to the truth. And I said, not unless you're already in Rome, in which case all roads lead away from Rome, right?
That's really good point. That's excellent. I think I saw it. I read it somewhere. Yeah, that's excellent. We are already in Rome, but that is actually what ended it for me when it started. When I like you already, yeah, there. What you're looking for, like you're already there. So there's no way to go. And I thought, oh my God, this is shortcut. You know, it came to me. This is like a shortcut when you play video games, and you put in God mode. There's a cheat mode in the past. I used to put that in. And then you go to the last level like now instantly. You don't have to go through the stages. And that reminded me of that's when you said you're already in Rome. That's excellent, Shiv. Okay, and just the last probably question, unless you have to add something else, about the pointers. How much do you really need number of pointers, and people hold on to pointers, they collect them or whatever? Do you need any pointers, or can it click like that, well, I'm already in Rome?
Do you need? So need is a very loaded word, right?
Yeah. But you have to say it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can tell you, you need air to breathe.
True.
That I can say as a fact. I can tell you, you need water in order to live past, I think it's about 3 days.
Yeah.
I know you need water, food in order to live past 10 or 12 days for the average person. You need shelter over your head in order to survive.
Excellent.
Everything else is bonus. Everything else is bonus, including love and comfort, community, family. Everything else is bonus. So when you start looking at the things that you have in your life, the experiences you have in your life, not as needs, but as gifts, different, right? Because when you need something, you think you deserve it. You don't deserve it. But as a gift, then when you get gifts, it generates a feeling of natural, organic gratitude. Not trying to cultivate gratitude. You're not trying to be grateful. You just are. You recognize that all these amazing things you have in your life, whether it be family or whatever it is a gift. You're appreciating it, right? You're not taking it for granted. So you're rooted in the reality of the situation. In that sense, now if at some point somebody says something that triggers some form of understanding, that's great. But it's not a necessity. It's not a need. And it's not the only way to connect with reality at all. So, philosophies and pointers and all of that, I'm not going to shun them. I'm not a huge fan of teachings because I find teachings are more the marketing campaign around a philosophy. It's not the philosophy itself. And teachers of philosophy are rarely teaching their own philosophies. They're teaching somebody else's. Jesus was never a Christian, and Adi Shankara didn't go around trying to teach the whole world Advaita philosophy. He just sat there, thought about life, and came up with this. So I encourage people who are curious of mind and curious to explore various lenses on reality to read philosophers. I loved reading philosophers. I never took any of their words as truth, in order to exercise the mind in different ways of perceiving. But that's about it. That is the extent I would take it. But pointers as in truths being pointed to, no. I think that's taking it a step too far. I don't think any word can do that effectively enough. They're much better off with real life experiences that can.
Yeah, life experiences like life. That's it, pretty much living you, whatever is happening teaches you you often trip and you learn not to trip again, how not to trip. Oh, yeah, it's just probably that's
And
more.
yeah, and what you learn through words is a very superficial learning, right? It's
Mm,
hitting only at the level of your cerebral cortex.
mm,
So it's that kind of learning is a form of indoctrination because it's not deeply seeping in.
yeah.
Because your body hasn't learned that. It's only your abstract brain that has learned that. So even though it clicks intellectually, but that's about it. The
Mm,
body learns through physical interaction and physical experiences and emotional experiences. And it'll only settle in your body when it has clicked for your body.
mm,
And that's not going to happen by somebody saying something.
yes.
Right? And that happens to lived experience, direct experience. The body only wants direct. It doesn't care about fantasy. The fantasies of the mind.
Yeah.
The body needs direct experience.
Mm. Yeah, I used to call it like a radar, Samina radar. They used to pick up on that bullshit and pick up on the message, but it wasn't certainly mine. You know, there's nothing like I was just like, no, don't use that.
Something within your
Yeah,
gut feels
yeah,
off, right? Something
yeah,
feels off, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And that's even the words that I've heard that they were melting through it, were not heard like some like through the mind again. They went through the, I don't know, it's just amazing, is through the body. I don't know, can't explain it like energetically. I don't know how, but but I thought also the pointers, I'd say pointers are not, they're there or not, but there are people who really had a few insights also. Sorry, it's more also insights. People said like I had also insights even that I wasn't a doer, but it came back to me that I was a doer. So belief of doer came back in a way. Well, yeah, I don't know if this is
So so that
mm,
if you watch, people are impressionable,
yeah,
and if you watch people at rock concerts,
yeah,
people at political rallies, you can see how physically they become so inspired, right?
yeah,
So that is a very human phenomenon, and yeah, words can trigger that kind of response. The point is that response is short-lived. Whatever insights is going to cause a spark within a person are short-lived. It's not going to be lasting. It's not going to be something. It evaporates as soon as it arrives. It soon starts evaporating. This is the frustration of the seeker. Oh, when I was in that moment with my teacher, everything just made sense, and now I just can't seem to get back there. I'm going back into my mind. I need to go back and be with the teacher. No, it's just because that level of interaction is always just going to be superficial.
yes.
The only way for that to truly be absorbed is through the lived experiences of life, not through talking to each other.
Yeah, people like going back to the old experiences and wanting it back, but without realizing it's a fresh and new experience like as we speak in this instant or whatever. So yeah. That's quite sweet. Thank you so much, Shiv, for your time. I really appreciated you talking to me. Have you got anything to add at the end, or?
No,
Yeah,
this was great. I really enjoyed.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. Okay, you can rest now from me a bit and look after your family. Enjoy.
All right.
All the best. Thank you so much.
Well, you have a nice day. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.